And welcome to the March 8th Board of Douglas County Commissioners 5:30 business meeting. We want to welcome those of you who are with us at the old courthouse and folks joining online. To get us started, here's some information about our public comment. Each action item on the agenda will offer an opportunity for relevant public comment about that topic. We ask that you wait until the agenda item you're here for comes up for public discussion. Additionally, near the start of our meeting, we will invite people to provide general public comment to the commission, which is a time for addressing issues not on today's agenda, but related to general county business. Public comment will not be recorded and shared on the county's YouTube site to ensure compliance with YouTube's content policies. To hear public comment, individuals can join us live on Zoom or here in the courthouse. We'll call on people first who are here in person, and then we will turn to any online commenters who are here with us tonight. If you're here on Zoom, please plan to use the raise your hand function when the time comes and listen for staff to call your name. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask everyone to give their full name and Douglas County residence for our meeting minutes. All public comments should be directed at the County Commission. We also reserve the right to mute or remove any speaker who is vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. Public should also know that comments received by the Commission during our meetings do not represent the views of the Douglas County government. If visual aids are used during the meeting, the presenter will share their screen. Please know that online participants will not be able to view them without a computer, smartphone, or tablet during tonight's meeting. Materials are published online for your reference also. Lastly, a recording of this meeting will be available on our YouTube page and website. All right, we're going to start tonight with our consent agenda. We have a proclamation right off the top. Sorry about that. So our meeting includes a proclamation, and then we have 8 items on our consent agenda. Then we'll do general public comment. We'll do the regular agenda. We have 1 item on regular agenda before going to appointments, and then Commissioner Administrative Miscellaneous. So let's begin with our proclamation. Do we have someone here from AmeriCorps? Excellent. Come on up. You're welcome to make some comments, and then I'll go ahead and read the proclamation.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Allie Lesher. I'm from United Way of Call Valley. I am actually here speaking on behalf of KJ Abel Rush. She is our volunteer director and in charge of our AmeriCorps members in Douglas County. So I'm just going to go ahead and read a statement from her. In coordination with state and local entities, national service and response to the most pressing issues facing our nation. AmeriCorps members prepare today's students for tomorrow's job, reduce crime, connect returning veterans to jobs, support seniors to live independently, make college more acceptable and affordable, and help Americans rebuild their lives following disasters. AmeriCorps members also work with various communities to serve their goal, meet their needs, and create lasting change. The United Way of Call Valley AmeriCorps program places members in health and human service agencies in Douglas County to help these organizations build capacity. We have 12 members serving at 10 agencies in Douglas County, with 5 additional members who will be serving this summer in 2 additional agencies. Helping to build capacity at their host sites may look like recruiting volunteers to help with Douglas County Back to School Drive, helping clients fill out SNAP or rental assistant applications, creating marketing materials for programs, helping clients access resources in our community, or serving clients in order to better meet the needs of their clients. So we are just so thankful for our AmeriCorps members. We have 1 attending here with us today. So thank you to them and all of those serving across Douglas County. And of course, you commissioners for the proclamation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Hallie. We're very lucky to have so many AmeriCorps members working in Douglas County. So thank you for your work. Whereas service to others is a hallmark of the American character, and throughout our history, citizens have stepped up to meet our challenges by volunteering in their communities. And whereas AmeriCorps provides opportunity for nearly 75,000 Americans to serve their country through an intensive commitment to service at nonprofits, schools, public agencies, and community and faith-based groups across the country. And whereas AmeriCorps enriches the lives of its members, building habitats to create engaged citizens who are active participants in civic matters affecting their communities long after their service terms are completed. And whereas AmeriCorps members encourage collaboration and partnerships, leveraging millions of volunteers in service and acquiring the support of business partners to increase the effectiveness of their initiatives. And whereas AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Vista members serving in various locations across Douglas County, Kansas, are actively addressing challenges facing our community, from fighting food and housing insecurity and running after-school programming, assisting health and human service agencies in their response to the COVID pandemic, to supporting health and financial literacy and training our youth of the future. National service expands economic opportunity by creating more sustainable, resilient communities and providing education, career skills, and leadership abilities for those who serve. Whereas AmeriCorps Week is an opportunity to recognize the dedication and commitment of the more than 1 million Americans who have chosen to serve their country through AmeriCorps and their community partners, and to encourage more Americans to follow their footsteps in service. Now, therefore, the Board of Douglas County Commissioners of Douglas County, Kansas hereby designates March 12th through the 18th, 2023 as AmeriCorps Week, and urges citizens to thank AmeriCorps members and alumni for their service and to find their own ways to give back to their communities. Adopted this 8th day of March, 2023. Thank you for being here. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Allie. All right, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Commissioners, is there any item on the consent agenda that you would like to remove for further discussion? Nope, I don't either. Is there anyone here at the courthouse who would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda for further discussion? 2.1 and 2.7. 2.1 and 2.7. We'll remove those. Is there anyone online, Sarah? All right, commissioners, I'd take a motion for the consent agenda items other than 2.1 and 2.7.
I move to approve the consent agenda items 2.2 through 2.6 and also 2.8.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Michael, do you have public comment on these items? Why don't you provide your public comment for 2.1 first?
So on 2.1, this is the minutes from February 7th. And anybody that was here would know that I called out the fact that this commission does not have a record of public comment. That is a failure of meeting structure. They're supposed to have an adequate record of the public comment. Due to the fact that they do not record the public comment, they're required to have an adequate record, a written record of that public comment, and it's in the minutes. It's funny that the minutes reflect my public comment from February 7th, where I called out the fact that they do not record, they do not keep an accurate record, they do not follow meeting rules. And that entire discussion was boiled down to Michael Irvey, Lawrence Accountability, stated that he'll get many reviews on his YouTube channel from his speech. That is bullshit spin. And it's not an accurate reflection of what happened in this meeting. It's bullshit spin. And none of these commissioners wanted to discuss it. None of these commissioners wanted to talk about their staff doing that spin.
Please address your comments to the commission.
I can look out here while I'm addressing you. I'll look where I want. This whole aspect of controlling the people when we come in here to speak to you, shut the fuck up and listen to us, man. Listen to us. And you can't kick me out for saying fuck.
Michael, I'm going to cut you off if
You
you say it
can't kick
again.
me out for saying fuck. It is protected speech.
Cut his
The
mic
word
off, please.
it's all protected speech. If you can't kick me out for protected speech, it's protected speech. Deputy, would you like to arrest me for protected speech? I am practicing a First Amendment right. You cannot throw me out,
I didn't say I was throwing you out.
but you're muting, you're cutting the mic.
I am.
You're cutting any kind of a record. And I've got a record over there that's gonna show it. You're violating meeting rules. You're violating the First Amendment. And God damn it, I hope this recorder over here at least recognizes. Because this is a bunch of bullshit. They can't silence the public. The city knows this. And that's why they don't play these games with public comment like this county does. You cannot silence the citizenry this way. How much time do I have left? 20 seconds. Let's spend 20 seconds thinking about the United States Constitution and your First Amendment right. Your First Amendment to the freedom of redress to your government. That's a big one. See what that gets boiled down to.
Okay, we'll move on. Commissioners, do you have any other discussion? Is there any other public comment on this item?
There you go.
Just 2.1.
Good evening. My name is Brian Wolf. I'm a citizen of Douglas County. And I was not aware of this situation that was just brought up, that the public comments are not being recorded. And I would just like to agree with the previous speaker that this doesn't sound like I'm not a lawyer, but it doesn't sound like the people's rights are being upheld in this situation. I mean, if the public is at a county commission meeting making comments, that should be in the record. That's all I have to say.
Any other public comment on this item? Anybody online, Sarah? Okay. Commissioners, any discussion on item 2.1 or we take a motion on it?
Let's keep getting me. As Commissioner Reed, I don't have any further comments beyond what we've stated before in these conversations, that minutes are an abbreviated record of the meeting. And so nobody's public comments are verbatim or even necessarily hit on every single item or topic that was mentioned. So these minutes have and always probably will be abbreviated versions of what occurred during our meetings.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what we've discussed before. I believe we've also discussed very clearly that the commission does have the opportunity to regulate the time, place, and manner of the comments made in public comment. And we've been very clear about that. I'm comfortable with our procedures on that. I understand that some community members are not, but I'm fine with our process so far. We've closed public comment. Thank you. Any motions?
So Commissioner Reed, I move to approve consent item 2.1.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll move on to item 2.7. I think we have some public comment on this. For those who were not here, this was an earlier meeting and we had quite a bit of discussion about the tow operators agreement. This is just coming back to us for final resolution. Go ahead.
The meeting that the commission has is having it with the tow operators. Is this mic on again? Okay. Is having it with the tow operators who are fucking greedy. And we all know this. Notice how fuck slipped by that time. Now, the tow operators in this town, you've seen them in the newspapers, the $551 tow bill pulling them out of a ditch on Queens Road. You've seen the $1,500 tow bill that forced this county into regulation out of Eudora several years ago. I'll let y'all know, I don't mind doxing myself. I'm a tow operator myself. I operate a tow company. That's what I do for a living. I come in here and raise hell with these people for a habit, for a hobby. But the idea that they need this kind of money for these tows is a bunch of crap. What they have in this resolution is saying that this tow company, let's say you run out of gas at 6th and Castle, and they call Hillcrest to come help you. They're going to bring you a couple gallons of gas. They're going to put the gas in your car and you're going to drive away. That's going to cost you about $140, according to their contract. Now, if you call that tow company directly yourself, they'll come do that for you for, I'm going to guess Hillcrest is doing service calls for somewhere in the 60 to 80 range. I'm going to guess. I'm usually a little lower than they are because I'm a smaller operation. But they will do the same work if you call them directly for a much lower price than they will when the police or somebody in authority calls them. And it's called a non-preference situation. The customer doesn't know who to call, so the police call them for them. And then that customer gets raped by a tow bill that I've been in here talking to these people about. When I started my first year out, I ran a little over 97,000 miles that year. And my per mile expense, business all the way across the board, my per mile expense was 78 cents a mile. That was all of my expenses. 78 cents a mile. They're charging up to $5 a mile now for mileage, which I think some of us are at 3 and 4 already. But the county has the highest rates. And anytime that somebody in a position of authority calls for your help out on the road, you are going to pay hard for that service. Call your own tow truck. And I hope everybody in the county watches this and understands, do not use county or city preference towing. Call your own tow truck.
Any other public comment on this item? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, we'll bring it back up to the commission. Commissioners, any further comment or questions for staff?
We had a full and robust conversation back and forth, weighing a lot of items when we talked about this with our regular agenda a couple of weeks ago, and I stand by our decision.
This is Commissioner Reed. I move to approve item 2.7 on today's consent agenda.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 3-0. All right, now we'll move to general public comment. Just a reminder, if you're here to provide general public comment, make sure you sign in on that sheet, share your name and address with us for our minutes. You don't have to sign the sheet to talk. So if you want to talk first and then sign the sheet, you're welcome to do that. Okay, we'll move on to our regular agenda, and we have an update from Little Government Relations. So I'm assuming we'll open up with Stuart.
Thanks, Commissioners. Mallory Lutz
Mallory.
is here. If you want to come.
Where's
to the podium
Mallory?
and
Oh,
give
there's
us an
Mallory.
update.
Hey, hi. Mallory Lutz with Little Government Relations.
Hi, Mallory.
All right, we are officially at the point in session where there are so many moving parts that my head is spinning. So I do apologize if I go off the rails. But I kind of want to talk about 3 different things. So where we are in the session, is specific local government legislation that has come up so far, and what's happening currently, and then kind of what to expect in the coming weeks. So where are we? We are halfway through session, thank goodness. First adjournment is set for April 6th. So really we are just 1 month away for anything and everything to happen. And of course, by April 6th, the legislature must pass their the state budget. And so there's a lot to be done in the next 3.5, 4 weeks. And then they will take a shorter break than usual. I'm very sad about that. They normally take a like 3.5 week spring break, which is amazing. But this year the Senate got to set the schedule and they decided they want a shorter spring break with the hope that they can go home really early. So I'll take it. If we're done by May 1st, which it sounds like maybe that's the goal, I'll take a shorter spring break. So major tax policy debate, in my opinion, is yet to come. I would say it's been a pretty kind of quiet first half of session in terms of talking about taxes. We haven't really seen any major debate yet in terms of property taxes. That might be a good thing, I guess. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the specific tax proposals that are making their way through the process at the moment, but I would keep our eyes open for the main major policy tax debate in the coming weeks. One other thing I would add, just in terms of kind of what is setting the tone at this point. Of course, last year I was here talking a lot about Apex, and about a year ago is when that major legislation was moving through the process. And I would say that is still very much on the minds of legislators. And so both the initial Apex project and then the second Apex project was, which was announced about a month or so ago for down in Wichita. And so lots of conversations about, of course, economic development and incentives, and how that impacts the budget as well. So that will be something that I think is talked a lot about as we continue to move through the budget process and as we get into conference committee time. So with that, that's kind of where we are. And then I'll talk a little bit about local government issues specifically, and some wins and some losses, or wins and challenges. My eternal optimist will categorize it as that. So some good wins that we have had over the last couple of weeks. There was a bill, Senate Bill 210, that would have made local elections partisan. And that this has been something that has popped up in, I would say, the last 2 years for sure, maybe 3. And so that was handily defeated in the Senate, which I consider a victory for local governments. Senate Bill 47, this is the ban on plastic bag bans. So this would have prevented you all from taking any kind of stance on banning plastic containers in general. This actually failed to even get out of committee. And so that's a good thing, except I would temper that with the fact that a bill then was subsequently introduced on the House side to try to do the same thing. And there will be a hearing on that next week. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. There's a sort of related bill that has to do with larger prohibiting municipalities from banning the sale of products or services that are otherwise allowed by state law. I think this is coming out of an issue in Sedgwick County, but we'll see how that goes. Another win, I would say, we're finally having some meaningful conversation around the opioid crisis, and in particular decriminalizing fentanyl testing strips. So if you recall last year, that it was almost a non-starter. People weren't even almost willing to have conversations about let's decriminalize fentanyl strips. And about a week ago, the House unanimously passed a bill that would decriminalize fentanyl strips. So that is really, really exciting. I know that's not necessarily something that is local government specific, but I think on a personal level, the opioid crisis, I think, is at the front of everybody's minds. A couple of other things, House Bill 2376 regarding restrictive covenants. So this would prohibit the recording of any restrictive covenant that violates the Kansas Act Against Discrimination. And it would authorize the removal of such covenants from existing documents. This passed the House unanimously as well. We were a little worried about it at first because there was a section in there that would have prevented local governments from adopting any NDOs that would have gone even further than the Kansas Act Against Discrimination. But the committee thankfully took that out when they worked the bill. And so then that bill passed the House without that section in it. And then lastly, one other thing I would mention, they're in the budget process, and I need to double check if it got in on both sides, but there was increased funding for local health departments that was requested. And so, and I want to say $700,000, and then that of course is distributed through the formula. And so we will be watching that as it makes its way through the budget process. And I will use local public health as my transition to talking about some challenges that we have seen this legislative session. So I would say for the most part, we're kind of coming out of COVID. In the last 2 years, the legislative sessions have been dominated by, just some really intense battles over public health and who can control that, and masks and vaccines, of course. And so this year we really haven't seen much of that. Thankfully, we haven't had any large debates over vaccinations or anything of that sort. But the Senate did pass a bill, Senate Bill 6, that would restrict the authority of local health departments and KDH&E to respond to disease outbreaks and contagious disease. So very narrowly passed the Senate. I'm not too worried even if it gets over to the House and passes. I'm confident that the governor will veto that, and I think there would be struggle to override that veto. Couple of other challenges, and again, we've seen these in the last couple years, in particular, Senate Bill 208, which would restrict ballot boxes and would well, they've kind of changed it. So I think we're down to just one, if they're even allowing them at all. And then also a couple of other bills that would require advanced ballots to be returned by 7 p.m. on election day. Senate Bill 252, government competition. This again is another issue that we have seen last year coming out of COVID. This would provide for exemptions from properties tax and sales tax for certain businesses seen in competition with governmental entities. So this did get out of the Senate Tax Committee a couple weeks ago, but it has not, the Senate floor has not taken up that bill. So when they do, we will be monitoring that closely. Last thing I would mention on some challenges, and this one will be getting some attention next week. So Senate Bill 248, I'm sure you have been hearing a lot about this in the last week or so. So Senate Bill 248 initially started out as a very narrow sales tax exemption on a very small list of perceived healthy foods, specific healthy foods. And then at about, I want to say 9 o'clock at night, when the Senate was debating through all of their long list of bills, they decided to scrap that and instead make it a sales tax exemption on food, both the state tax and the local tax. And so I think it's fair to say that really nobody kind of saw that coming. And so that did pass the Senate. I didn't capture the vote count on that. It wasn't overwhelming vote on that, but it actually has a hearing in House Tax on Monday. And so I'm not sure the House has as much appetite for this version of the bill as the Senate does. So, and we're seeing a lot of pushback, both from the governor's office and of course, Kansas Association counties and municipalities and really all cities and counties are pretty worried about that. So I think it has a much harder time getting through the House. Two other things I would mention that I know that we were engaged with last week. House Bill 2430 had a hearing. This was the housing and homelessness related bill. This would have provided for requirements for use of funds allocated to agencies for the purpose of supporting unhoused individuals. I would note that there was only one out-of-state proponent for the bill and I believe 30 plus opponents to the bill. So I'm not sure it's going anywhere. But we weighed in on that since you all do so much work in that here in the county. And then one other county specific bill, Senate Bill 163, is the Peaslee Tech bill that passed out of committee a while back, and then the Senate just hasn't debated it yet. So we will watch for that. And my third point, where are we going from here? What issues are going to be on the table at the end? And so I have sort of 3 examples, one that's a maybe, one that's a no, and one that's a yes, so in my opinion. And I have to modify this a little bit because I've already gotten a notice that there's going to be a hearing on this next week, but medical marijuana was my maybe example. Because you'll recall after Governor Kelly was elected and in the lead up to the election, you know, she made this clear that this was a priority for her. She addressed it specifically in her State of the State back in January. And I think it's apparent that most Kansans want this. So there are bills in the House and the Senate. If you'll recall, 2 years ago, the House passed medical marijuana for the first time. And they made it clear to the Senate this year that we are not going to waste our time on another bill until you give us something. So the Senate has been silent on the issue until now. And they, as of 5 o'clock tonight, they have decided they are going to have a hearing next week. So we will see where that goes. Medicaid expansion. This is my no example, unfortunately. So it has been made very clear by legislative leadership that Medicaid expansion is probably a no-go again this year. So we, of course, will keep an eye on that, but there have really been few health bills that have made it to the floor, I think, because of the potential for Medicaid expansion to be added to it, and leadership is really watching that. So I unfortunately don't have too much hope for that this year. And then my yes example for what issues are going to be on the table, of course, tax policies. So anything from the sales tax on food to which may or may not also include feminine hygiene products and diapers. That is something that the governor has really pushed for to be included in that. The other tax issues being debated, the flat tax, that is one that has passed the Senate, hasn't been taken up in the House yet. And that is estimated, now I don't have the numbers because I have too many numbers going through my head, but that has a hefty fiscal note on it that I think will create some strong opposition to that, certainly from the second floor, the governor's office. The Senate did also pass a Social Security and retirement income tax exemption from income tax. And so that will be another one that I'm sure will be on the table at the end. And then a couple other little things, the back to school sales tax holiday. Again, that was something the governor was pushing for, and it's been kind of silent up to this point, but I am confident that will be included probably in a bundle of tax bills in conference committee. And then I wouldn't be surprised if we see efforts to put the government competition issues as well into bundles of property tax bills at the end. So that is kind of what I had. I know that is a lot of information. It's basically almost 9 weeks of information to get into 10 minutes of conversation, but I wanted to leave time for Q&A, so.
Thank you, Mallory. I always appreciate your reports and they're very thorough, and especially the emails that we get that update us as well. Some things you're right to be happy about, but I would say more on the side of I'm disappointed in a number of things. Questions, commissioners? No questions? All right, I'm not seeing any questions. We'll
Okay.
open this up for public comment. Seeing none here. Oh, there is public comment. Come on up.
This is Nicole again from Douglas County. And I don't know if I've been to one of these meetings yet where this person comes and gives these updates. And I don't really know what the process is, but it just seems that whoever person presenting to you should at least come across neutral. I, again, don't know her role, but it just seems fair that whoever's going to update you on state issues should not obviously be on the side of big government. And it's really scary if the government's going to get less money and tax the people more. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So it's just offensive.
Any other public comment? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay. This is not an action item. This is just for informational purposes only. Commissioners, any other discussion on this?
I'll just comment that I do appreciate the regular updates that we get. They're often included in Sarah's memo to us weekly. And then we have just a couple of these opportunities for Mallory or Stuart to come talk to us, and the work that they do on our behalf is really sort of refreshed every year based on what our legislative priorities are that we set as a county, and communicate ahead of the session starting at the beginning of each year. So, and I think we also get a lot of additional information about things that obviously are brand new to state legislative conversation that are pertinent for us to know about, but also appreciate receiving regular updates throughout the year about what priorities we've communicated to our state legislature as Douglas County, and how those things are going each year. So I just appreciate the level of detail, and that was a pretty good 10-minute summary for that much content. So thanks, Mallory.
Okay, Sarah?
Just a reminder that Mallory and or Stuart will be back at the end of the legislative session to give us another update.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on from that and go to appointments. Commissioners, do we have any appointments tonight? I don't think we do.
I do
Oh,
have one.
you do
It's
have
been in the works for a little while, and I finally put all parties together, I believe. So for the Youth Services Board, I would like to nominate Margaret Harris, and her title is the Bridging Consultant and case manager at O'Connell Children's Shelter. So she will be fulfilling, if commissioners agree, the community service organization spot that's been open on the Youth Services Board.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Willie. I appreciate all your diligence and really taking a look at that list of open appointments and thinking about who you know and who you can make connections with. So I appreciate that energy and happy to second that motion.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Can I have you forward us the contact info that you have for that person? So that we can
Yes.
get them.
And Pam
Yep.
has it also.
Yeah, we need it for our records too.
You bet.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to miscellaneous. Sarah, we usually start with your memo.
Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Willie asked that the county appraiser be here, and I have just sort of as valuation notices have recently gone out. So Steve Miles, our county appraiser, is here. A copy of his appraisal newsletter is in your commission packet. Steve, I don't know if you want to come forward, and I just don't know if commissioners have any questions about this time of year. This is a process we go through each year. And so maybe Steve, you can just kind of explain, what happens, the process to set the valuation notices and then where we go from here.
Good evening, commissioners, and good evening, everybody attending, both in person and online. The county appraiser's office is charged with valuing all taxable property within the county. That includes real estate and personal property. We just sent out the change of value notices for the real estate. They were due in the mail by March 1. We got them in the mail February 28th. The process that we go through to establish the values that we put on those change of value notices is very similar to what any appraiser would do for a home loan or any appraisal of that sort. We look at comparable sales, in other words, properties that are similar to the subject property that have sold, and then extrapolate or make adjustments for any differences that might be between the two. It's the same process that any single property appraiser would do. The only difference is we're doing thousands of properties instead of just one. And so we use a lot of statistics to arrive at the adjustments and apply those. On income producing properties such as a office building that is rented to a company or individuals, we oftentimes look at the income approach on that, and that's a capitalized a method of capitalizing the rent that is charged. We also take out expenses and that sort of thing. We actually are capitalizing the net operating income from that analysis. We gather rent information about all kinds of properties and then categorize it and then apply that. We determine what is the most typical rent. It might not be the exact rent of that property, but it's going to represent what an investor might ask to rent a building or a property of any type to an operator. Excuse me. The third approach that we look at is the cost approach, and that is simply looking at what would it take to replace that property with one of similar size and function if we had to build it today or buy a piece of property and build a similar type of structure on it. And it's involving the theory of substitution. We're looking at, if I'm a buyer, can I build something allowing for depreciation? Can I build it for the same for the same cost or less than I could go out and buy it on the fair market? And so it's kind of the theory of substitution there. So we look at those three approaches in every property that we can. Oftentimes, it's only two: comparables and cost, or income and cost, depending on the property. Once that's all done, then we do have each appraiser. We have 7 appraisers on staff right now that look at every single record and look at the values that have been generated and determine, are they reasonable? You know, they know, they study the market, they know what things are selling for. But is it reasonable for that property? So you might have 10 or 20 ranch style houses in a subdivision. Oftentimes they're built, every fourth one's the same plan. So you can have comparables but there's going to be slight differences between them. So sometimes our values are slightly different from one house to the next, depending on condition, amenities that have been applied, and just things like that. If you've been following the news nationally and even locally, you'll recall that pandemic came along. Everybody was concerned that we're going to go into a nosedive on everything, values and everything. We were as concerned as everybody else. The statistics didn't bear that out. They went up. Everything went up. Last year, we went up about 17% on residential properties. This year, yes, sales have slowed down, but the sale prices have not gone down. So therefore, we're looking at on residential properties about a 9.3% increase in overall valuations. Now, does that mean that every house is going up 9.3%? Not necessarily. Some can go down. Some can go way up more than that. So we're fielding those phone calls right now. As of today, I had 51 applications for an informal meeting come into the office. We're scheduling those as they come in, and we will probably start. I didn't look to see when the first meeting would actually take place, but we're scheduled to start those the week of March the 20th. So in about a week or so. More than likely, it might be a little bit later than that, but we try and give everybody enough time to get their information together and then come in. Since the pandemic, and this is something we learned from the pandemic, prior to that, we had primarily done our informal meetings in person. That meant people had to take off work, come in, sit down with us and visit. The pandemic changed all that. We started doing them mostly by phone, and we've continued that. It's worked very well. They can send their information to us via email or snail mail, whichever they prefer, or drop it off. And we will give them a call on the appointed time and date and discuss the information then. Typically, and I've got this in some of my newsletters, it's not in the last one, but typically around 50% are what receives some sort of adjustment. Sometimes it's not very much, but about 50% do receive some sort of adjustment due to condition, something that we didn't know about the property. We only view properties from the outside, by the way. So somebody might take very good care of the outside of their house, but not much inside. So it makes a difference. But we try and put ourselves in the buyer's from the buyer's viewpoint when we're looking at these values. We have prepared a sheet that we can pass out to people that kind of gives a little brief summary of the valuation process, what they can do and bring in for the informal meetings. Few statistics in it, but not very many. The newsletters that I try and produce, which I apologize, have been a little lax in some months, but the newsletters I try to put out do give a lot of information, a lot of statistics on what the values have been doing. I did just before, well, just this afternoon, one of the other counties in the area asked for a short survey of what the single family houses were doing as far as increases or not. And Johnson County said they were going up about 12%. Miami County, which is the only other county I have, went up 19.68%. So my approach has always been, let's let this facts lead us to where we should be. And yes, I do take a lot of flack for maybe not being considerate of people, but that's the constitutional guidelines that I have say that I have to value things at fair market value. It doesn't say I can take into account, can somebody afford that? Can somebody afford the taxes on it? That's y'all's department. So you come into play there. But if I'm doing my job correctly, everybody should look at it as a kind of a check on their net worth. You know, did their net worth go up or go down because of the investment, which a home is probably their largest investment that they'll ever make. So if they look at it from that sense, and then look around at what the rest of the market's doing, what their neighbors are selling for, I think they'll see that we're doing a pretty good job of valuing most properties. Property Valuation Division, Department of Revenue has kind of a scorecard, I guess you might call it, the sales ratio study. Typically on our residential will run around 97%, which means we're just a little under what everything's selling for. But the last couple of years, it's been really tough to get much above 90. Yeah. So it does strap us a little bit, but we still try and report what the market's doing. With that, I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Stephen, I have a quick question. Thanks for the update. One quick question is you said you had 51 applications for an informal meeting. How many do you typically have in a year?
Well, and it's in one of my newsletters, I believe it was 2021, we had 441 informal meetings. That's the spring meeting. Last year we had 1,981. So but we had a pretty good jump last year. So a lot of people were nervous about it.
Ask a follow-up to that, and thank you so much for kind of bringing me up to speed on the process and what part is yours and what part is ours, and before we get into budget discussions later in the year. So my question is, you mentioned about 50% see some kind of adjustment, and that's 50% of the informal meetings usually end up as an adjustment?
That 50% is not just the informal meetings, that's the whole of what we call the appeal process. That can be the informal meetings, which are the spring meetings, which happen now. The payment under protest appeals happen usually in December. We actually hold them in January, but that's when they can file is when the first half taxes are due in December. And they usually, those are not quite as high a percentage of reduction or change.
Can you back up and walk us through that appeal process? I know some of that is spelled out in the valuation letters that people get, but what is that process?
Well, excuse me. When we send out the change of value notices, and I'll talk about that process just right because that's what we're happening right now. When we send out the change of value notice, of course, on the front side, we have the previous year's value and the value that we have assigned to the property for the current year, 2023 in this case. On the back side will be what we call the request form. And simply a person just has to fill that out, and it has some identifying numbers on it so that we can, when it comes in, we can get it assigned to the right property and everything. But they fill that out, send it back to us, or we've been taking them by fax, we've been taking them by email, as long as there is an original signature at the bottom. I mean, if it's of course, a facsimile, it'll be a facsimile of the original, but we don't want it to come unsigned. Now, and then we will assign an appointment date and time. Usually people can, if they've got times that that don't work for them, they can note that and let us know. We try and accommodate them. But once we assign the date and time, we send a notification of the appointment. And basically it'll say, we will call you at this number that you provided at such and such time, and we'll discuss the property condition or whatever it might be at that time. We do review the record with them, and we also tell them how we arrived at that value. And that's part of the process. Once that phone call has been made or that meeting's been made, we my appraisers make a decision. I review everything and approve or disapprove. If I disapprove, I go back to the appraiser and say, hey, why, tell me more. If they can't make me understand, then I can't make anybody else understand. So once that happens, then we send a notification of the results. The property owner then has the choice to either appeal it further to the State Board of Tax Appeals, either through the small claims or directly to the regular division, and continue the process there. Payment under protest works pretty much the same way, except that form goes through the treasurer.
Any other questions for Stephen? No. Thank you very much. Appreciate
You're welcome. I am available. My office is in the basement. I'm there just about every day. So if anybody wants more questions, come up with anything, obviously my email's on the website because I've been getting emails. And so I threatened to take it off, but
Thanks, Stephen.
Sarah won't let me. So
I know this is a busy time for you for sure. Thanks for being here. Sarah?
Thanks, commissioners. Just want to give you a brief TRC update. On Thursday, March 2nd, Patrick Schmitz and I had our weekly one-on-one check-in. Then on Friday, March 3rd, county staff and council met with Burt Nash staff and council to discuss the scope of services for high acuity patients and the terms of the operating agreement for about an hour. And we had another meeting on this last Monday, the 6th, for approximately an hour with county staff and council and Burt Nash staff and council, along with Drs. Donna Dodson and Dr. Cord Houston, to continue that work on the scope of services for high acuity patients in the terms of the agreement. County staff received additional due diligence materials late Monday afternoon. County staff is in the process of evaluating all of the due diligence materials in accordance with the timeline the County Commission shared with the Board of County Commissioners and the public in early February. We plan to have that review completed and report to the County Commission on the status of the due diligence on March 22nd. Additional meetings of county staff and council and Burt Nash staff and council are scheduled for tomorrow. And then Patrick Schmitz and I are scheduled for our weekly one-on-one check-on Friday. And also, commissioners, want to just remind everyone that we do not meet tomorrow or next week. We don't meet tomorrow and we don't meet next week. So we are not meeting on March 15th because there are 5 Wednesdays in March and we generally take one off. After that, we have work sessions both on the 22nd and 29th, and those agendas are looking pretty full. So we look forward to getting back to some of those items then, and just stand for any questions commissioners might have.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions, commissioners? Before we move to Commissioner Miscellaneous, I see Chief Llewellyn is here. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do want to say how much I appreciate you coming to our meetings. Lawrence Douglas County Fire Medical. I'm going to underline the Douglas County Fire Medical there. And it's great to see the chief here. And I don't know if you have any updates you want to share with us, or no pressure there, but I just want to give you an opportunity. Sarah's got the 3-minute sign over there.
Yeah,
So,
chief,
yeah, Chief.
keep it brief. No.
You're welcome to talk as long as you like, Chief.
Thank you. Good evening. Rich Llewellyn, Fire Chief for Lawrence Douglas County Fire Medical. I do have a couple updates I'd like to share with you. As far as the Douglas County part is in our name, we do have some new ambulances coming. We've reworked the livery on or the graphics on the outside of the ambulances. You're going to see a big LDCFM, which is our branding that we're stressing. We're not changing our name. We're just kind of refreshing how we stress our branding. So you'll see a big LDCFM on the side, and then under that will say Lawrence Douglas County Fire Medical. We're pretty excited about the ambulances. Some of the other changes are a very hefty grill guard on the front with the number of miles that our teams put out on the highway at high speeds. We want to protect them in the event of any particularly animal collisions. I know we do have a history of that in the county, particularly. I think there was a bull or some other large domestic animal that wandered down into a roadway and was hit within
We
the.
have hit a cow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're pretty excited about that, and you should be seeing similar changes to some other apparatus. I know our fire investigation unit is going to come out with a real similar look. It currently has Lawrence Fire Medical in big font and Douglas County in really small font. So with the purchase of the new vehicle, you're going to see kind of a similar format on that. And I'm available to answer any questions if you have any format.
No question. Maybe one. The last time you were, maybe it was 2 times ago, you were here, we sort of discussed about, are there any opportunities to work with Fire District 1? I just didn't know if you had any of those that you've seen over the past couple of months that have popped up.
Yeah, that's a great and very timely question. I just had lunch today with Chief Baxter, and we did discuss mutual aid and kind of where our operations cross over. And one of those that we in particularly discussed was in water rescue, and we both field water rescue assets, and we need to do that in a coordinated manner. And one of the things that I found when I first arrived here at LDCFM is that we have very few mutual aid contracts with any other agencies. The only mutual aid contracts for a full range of services existed with Ottawa, Overland Park, and Olathe. And there was apparently a historic liking for cities that began with O, but we did not even have any mutual aid agreements for full service mutual aid with any agencies in Douglas County. So Chief Baxter and I are talking on that, and you sitting as the Fire District 1 board will probably be hearing about that from his end as well. And we're going to be exchanging some documents moving in that direction.
I would ask a similar question. Training opportunities and collaboration opportunities with fire districts 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be all of them in Douglas County. Number 4, of course, being out of Overbrook, another O name.
Yeah. We're very interested in training with all of our partners. As we look at our response matrices, one of the things I found and we've been discussing since I arrived is that we send the same resource complement to a fire, whether it's a 10-story dormitory or a small single family structure. And we need to tailor our responses so they're appropriate with the risk that's being faced and the hazard that's present. And the NFPA, it's some document, I can't remember exactly the NFPA number, but discusses the appropriate resources for a high-rise response. And I think what they were looking for was 42 firefighters, which is more than we typically have on duty. So we need to find ways to get those resources in place. And we want to be able to work with resources that we've historically trained with or have experience with. And if they're coming from other agencies, we want to have that training in place and that familiarity in place. And so we're very excited to be training with other agencies. Our training center on Haskell has facilities that a lot of agencies don't have. We do have an agreement that is available, blank agreement or template agreement that we can share with other agencies who can come up and use that facility. And I believe Fire District 1 is one of those agencies that's training there. We've also talked with Northwest Consolidated from Johnson County about coming over there, and Ottawa has also signed an agreement to use our training facility. So we're excited to train with other agencies and always happy to make all of our training offerings open to other departments.
Thank you. Anything else for the chief?
I would just say he missed an opportunity to brag on his organization and their recent re-accreditation process.
I do appreciate that prompt. Sarah, we were just in Florida last week at the Commission on Fire Accreditation International Hearings, appeared before the commission and were unanimously approved for reaccreditation. This will be our 4th accreditation cycle. They're 5 years, so we've been accredited for 15 years and we'll be accredited for 5 years more.
Congratulations. That's a big deal.
It's a
I mean,
huge
I
deal
don't,
in the fire
I don't know if the community understands all the work that goes into that. And so to you and your team, congratulations. That's really great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, commissioners, anything else? All right, seeing none, we're adjourned.